It's time again for the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with Dr. John Dentico. The mission of our podcast is to provide 21st century leadership training for a talent-driven world. We help organizations implement strategies and practices designed to attract, hire, engage, and retain top talent while mitigating the effects of burnout. Our guests are experts in various fields of organizational dynamics, including, but not limited to, leadership, management, communication, and coaching. They bring a world of knowledge and solutions to our viewers and listeners. I am sincerely grateful for their participation and ideas. So let's dive in. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We genuinely appreciate your support. Hello again. Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. This is Dr. John Dentico. This morning I have Kevin Kremer, who has 25 years experience as an entrepreneur and founder of multiple healthcare companies. He is the happily married father of 4 adult children and is passionate about the clues for success. His work focuses on an accountability mindset, the importance of belief systems, and the importance of mindset in how people make choices to interact and respond to others. More to the point, he is concerned with how mindset relates to engagement and retention of top talent, and has created a quantum awareness model that informs his daily actions. I am pleased to have him here today. Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
I'm great, John. Thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Glad you could join me today. So, as I like to say, let's jump right in. Kevin, you have my attention, without a doubt. Tell me and my listeners about the quantum awareness model, how it came about, and its purpose.
And in my model, what I've discovered and what I'm presenting is that it starts with our mindset. So first of all, we have to take accountability. We have to have a desire and a want and a drive to be a leader. And from that, we will take action steps in the direction that towards that leadership that we desire. So if we think about some of the great people or successful people, like say Michael Jordan in basketball, for example, he was arguably one of the greatest athletes of all time. When George Mumford went to evaluate him, he thought he might be psychotic or bipolar or something because he had these extreme highs. So there had to be a counteractive low. And what he found was there was just this internal drive that drove him to continue to practice and work on his game. So it's like, how do we build that in a person, and how do we get them to, when I talk about quantum awareness, that kind of starts on the non-physical, the non-practical level where it's going on in our mind. So I call that quantum accountability, where if we take ownership and accountability for our mindset and say, okay, I want to learn, I want to grow, then we're going to choose who we spend our time with, who our mentors are, what we listen to, podcasts versus rock and roll music. Not that there's anything wrong with music, but how are we spending our time? Are we watching educational things? Are we watching by reading a book? Or are we just every night going home and watching the next great streaming Netflix series? So how we take ownership and accountability for how we spend our time on that develops that mindset and that work ethic that then determines the actions we take. It determines our choices, it determines our habits, and it determines our decisions and our goal setting. So when we talk about, with you talking about the impact and turning knowledge into action, it's how do we teach a person to fish rather than giving them a fish, in the sense that how do we help them develop that mindset where they're going to want to take action and be a great leader?
Yeah, it's a very interesting issue. The things that I've always thought about when we talk about the self-awareness, for example, is how self-aware. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little bit. How self-aware must a person be? I think too often we create this sense of personal perfection, if you will. And when is it time for someone to say, okay, I'm aware, I'm mindful, I'm aware, but am I really ready to be a leader and to do the job? Any comments on that? Any reflection on that?
I think that awareness, how self-aware it goes into people defining what's really important to them in life. So not everybody wants to be a leader in the term of a business leader or helping manage people or whatnot. However, if we think of leadership in starting, first of all, them leading themselves on okay, if we break down our life, say, into the various areas of our relationships, our spirituality, our personal health, our career, our finance, our how we spend our time, and we look at those areas and we discover, okay, I'd really like to be at this level, but I'm only here. What's it going to take to get there? And then we can create that structure to put things into practice, to take action to get there. And I think that's where leadership starts.
Okay, good point. I can see that there can be, not saying there is all the a conflict sometimes. Wanting to excel, wanting to move, as you say, to the next level, if you will. I can see that coming in conflict with perhaps someone's own authenticity. Okay. I have to be that person in order to be successful. See where I'm going with this? I have to be that person rather than, you know what? I'm good. I'm okay. I may have to do things a little differently. I may have to learn more, as you say. And oh, by the way, that's one of the biggest requirements of the workforce, the skilled workforce today. They want training and learning that will advance their personal development. So, how do you reconcile that? Reconcile someone's authenticity versus this all out drive to, in a sense, be at another level.
So the entrepreneur is the consummate driver or high ambition person, and not everybody is like that. And so it goes back to when you say authenticity, it's about, I like the term granting beingness, which is discovering a person as far as this is who they are, this is where they want to be, and find that right seat or that opportunity for them to thrive in your culture. And so it's a balancing point in that we know that growth lies outside our comfort zone. We've all heard that. And so how do we discover that, hey, a person does want to grow and they want to move in a certain direction and we can help them with that? Or, oh no, we found their sweet spot and let's let them thrive there and sit back and let them do their job.
Good point. Let me ask you this question. In all of this, how important is it for a person to find a sense of purpose in their lives?
I think it's huge. I think it goes to back to a philosophical thing of why are we here? And we would all like to feel like I would hope we feel like there's a reason we're here. And if this human experience is a quest, then perhaps it's an opportunity for us to grow and improve and get better. So if we can discover what that is to us, to our core, and what that how we resonate with that and move in that direction, that's where the joy and the happiness come from. And knowing that life isn't all rainbows and butterflies all the time. We're not going to be happy all the time. Yet, if we're moving in a direction towards a defined purpose that we align with, then we feel fulfilled.
Okay, fine. Let me ask you this question. I need you to connect the dots for me a little bit here. Let's talk about mindset and retention. Okay. Can you paint a picture for me and my listeners on how are they joined at the hip, so to speak?
So when you say retention, you're referring to an employee staying at a company.
Correct.
Correct.
More times than not, that's right. Right.
Yeah. I think we've seen a big shift since COVID. And I think that we talk about employee engagement and quiet quitting and those types of terms out there. So it's with that shift, I think the mindset shift component of that is that COVID was an opportunity for some people to reevaluate what's important in life. And some people might have found, what? My job is just a job. I don't have a real sense of purpose there. And so I'd rather hang out with my family or my friends or this or that. And so, because of that, we've lost a lot of engagement. So, the question is, can those people, through their mindset, find a sense of purpose? Because if they go through the whole, let's say it's a 25-year-old and they go through the rest of their working life, could be another 50 years, just doing JOBs, are they going to feel as fulfilled in that portion of their life? So it's okay to be fulfilled in your personal life and have great magical moments and relationships. However, wouldn't it be beneficial to be aligned and engaged in whatever you do and have that sense of purpose? So that's where I think it starts with the mindset. And then leadership side, the practical application, is where we would do our best efforts to help people see the value in being engaged, in doing a good job, or doing their best. It reminds me of a story Larry Miller talked about in his autobiography about the $5 job. It's funny. Have you read that at all?
No, I have not.
So,
I have not read that. No.
and he mows the lawn. This is back in the 60s. And she said, "How much do you think it's worth?" And he says, "Oh, it's 50 cents. Like, actually, I'm going to pay you $2. It's a $2 job. But there's a $4 job of mowing the lawn if you do it right. And $5 is probably impossible." So the story goes that he goes back every week and mows the lawn. And he's just trying to figure out how to do a better and better job. So that's where he had personal accountability and personal drive and a desire to want to do something great. And then he got to where he was doing these $350 jobs on this. And then he realized that the $5 impossible job is what he really wanted to achieve, because you want to go after the impossible and see if it's possible. So, point of that being, is there a way to engage people through our leadership to get them to try and do that $5 job? Because one other comment on that is, the average person sometimes will, on a scale of 1 to 10, be doing an output in their work of, say, a 4 or 5, but they think they're at a 9. So there's a disconnect in how they're really delivering results and how good they're doing.
And I think it's important for feedback, honest feedback for someone. And I know that many young people today are searching for it. I think we all searched for it. Just to say it's part of a younger generation is really not correct. We all searched for some level of feedback on whether or not we were on the right path, that seemed to satisfy the requirements. Was it above and beyond, so to speak? Well, for my money, I think the single greatest motivation force on the planet is meaning. People are searching for a sense of meaning in their lives. And I saw this quote one time that said, if you don't have meaning, you die. And I believe that to be true. When people lose a sense of meaning, they stop wanting to be part of life. And so I am always, wrapped around the axle, so to speak, in terms of when I talk to people, say, when you find out what are the meaning things in this person's life, when you're bringing somebody in to hire them, what gives them meaning? What really puts fizz in their soda, so to speak? So I think and I think it's also part of the mindfulness aspect and the authenticity aspect. They all like work together. So for me, if we could find a sense of meaning for someone, or not find it for them, but find out what that gives them the meaning in life, I think it helps a lot in engagement, and it helps a lot in retention, especially if there's something that person can do in the organization that strikes to the heart of that. You have a book coming out soon. If you would like to share the title, and could you give my listeners a brief overview of the book?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I do, to comment on your meaning, that's a really
Sure.
great point, John. I totally resonate with that. And I would add on to that you want to discover what's important to that person and what gives them meaning, yet you also want to tie it to your company vision. And then you want to make sure, with the core values that your company represents, that those things align. And I think that's part part of retention starts with the hiring, right? And hiring those right people and making sure that the old slow to hire, quick to fire, that we're spending that time on discovering what their meaning is, and does it align with the vision of the company and the values. So the book it's called Quantum Accountability, that's coming out, and it's based upon this quantum awareness model, where I use the term quantum, meaning the unseen, these non-physical particles. And what I say in this is that our mindset, the things we can't see, like I mentioned earlier, with what we're listening to, what we're choosing to watch, who we're spending our time with, what we're feeding our mind, just like what we feed our body ends up how we look over time, right? How healthy we are. What we feed our mind determines that health. And then from that, we're constantly growing and molding that mindset. So it's on a continuum, like Carol Dweck talked about, a fixed versus a growth mindset. I've taken that further, and I talk about scarcity and victim mindsets and pessimism, and I talked about growth or abundance. And so as we constantly through our whole life, we're developing this mindset, what I call this mindset star, that's constantly connected, that then determines, this is who we become. Our mindset is that determines what we do in life. It determines those action steps. And so our choices, our habits, our decisions, that's the action that we take in life, that we see in the physical manifestation of reality from all of that work we do on our mindset, and we do in the non-visible and the quantum. And then that action, what we do, then determines the result or outcome is what we have. And that's what I call quantum abundance. So we go from accountability, quantum accountability, to action to abundance. And that's where success comes from. So I call it the quantum awareness model. And this first book is about that accountability. And there are practical tools and tricks and tips on how. Starts with becoming aware of this importance of the mindset. And then there are tips and tricks and tools on how to cultivate and develop that. One simple example is like Ben Franklin. One of our greatest founding fathers of this country, he wanted to have a more virtuous life and live the best version of himself. So he started a virtue tracker where he developed, these are the really 13 most important virtues to me. And on a daily basis, he was tracking and checking off. So we know what gets measured gets done, and putting measurements behind and tracking and awareness around things is how we get results. So that's in a nutshell what the book is about.
It sounds very interesting and exciting. So I wish you all the best with it. I want to go back for a minute because you touched on something that I talk about all the time, and that is values alignment. There are three, you could call them trends or things that emerge when if you were to survey the skill talent pool. One is values alignment. Two is they want their work to matter, meaning. They want meaning from life. And the third is training and learning that develops them. I absolutely agree on values alignment. I think, to be perfectly honest with you, the groups that I've spoken with, I don't think their messaging contains that, if you will. They're not focusing on that type of messaging. I was at it. I was doing a presentation at the North Carolina Nurse Practitioners Spring Symposium, and one of the women that was there was involved in hiring, and she said, and she was amazed when I brought these 3 points up, and she said, "I've never thought of it like that," and I think you're right. She said, "What I do is when someone comes in, where have you been? What projects did you work on? What parts of the hospital were you involved in? Were you in trauma? Were you in elder care? Those kinds of things, geriatric?" And I said, "Yeah, why don't you try to find out about this person first?" And having said that, I want to make sure, and I thought about this a lot in the last couple of days, is there may not be a good fit. You may have someone come in the door, and I have this exercise called the shared values recruiting exercise that I teach. And I said, after you do this, you may come out of it and say, this person doesn't fit in with us. They want something else, and they're not going to fit into the culture, or they don't have the same value system. Let's make it easy. They don't have the same value system as we have or we need. That's okay. That's okay. You're not going to hire everybody, but you need to find that out, just as you said, up in the beginning, because I think that directly affects retention. And so, thanks for that. That's a good point. Again, all of it to me flows through this sense of purpose and meaning. If people can develop, that's so powerful. I think it moves beyond just like being confused about where you should go, what you should do, and as you said, just having a job. So I appreciate that very much.
I think that I think meaning is huge in that, and one of the things I notice in the younger generation right now with the quiet quitting and whatnot is that and the engagement and retention is that their mindset is, oh, the grass is greener, and they don't have a lot of that just stick to itiveness where I'm going to figure it out, and I think that's where a lot of growth comes from, is working through difficult times. If you're in a relationship and you've been married 10, 20, 30 years, you've probably worked through some challenges. It's not always perfect, right? And so it's for people who are like, they're just going to jump ship after this or that. It's having conversations about, when I see the people that do stick through and stick around, it's really powerful to see how much they've grown. And sometimes I operate dental practices, and dentistry is not the most amazing business where people are loving to come to see you. And so someone might come to work for us who hasn't been in the industry, and how do you find meaning for them? We're going in and we're taking these diseased mouths and totally reconstructing full mouth reconstructions with implants, 3D printing, same day teeth, and people walk in with this mouth that's a mess and they leave with this amazing smile. And my team members, these patients, like, they're in tears. Oh my gosh, you've changed my life. This is amazing. And then the team members see that and it gives them meaning. Like, we're not just scheduling an appointment. We're not just dealing with a follow-up call. We're impacting people to the core. And it's interesting if we can help people see that in whatever they do, that making some small change here can touch them to the core. Wow. Then we can really get people engaged in the meaning that they provide.
Yeah, connecting them to the results. Yeah, I can understand that completely. I think that's important rather than just sitting at a desk and moving papers from one side to the other and thinking everybody keeps telling you how great a job you're doing. I think you have to connect people to the results and let people see what's real.
I
Go
put
ahead.
together a little competition last month. We did a raffle where anybody on the team who recorded, we have signed authorization that we can use video on our patients. And anybody who records a patient experience or tells a story, we're just sharing it internal on our internal communicator, that they get a raffle ticket. And then we had a raffle at the end of the month. And so it got everybody recording stories. And so they were capturing those moments of a customer, a patient that was happy and thrilled with the result. And then it just built this whole energy of, oh, look at all the great that we do. Because sometimes people forget that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one way to actually re-engineer, if you will, culture.
Yeah.
Stories are the repository for culture. If we had no stories, we'd have no culture. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So creating these stories and letting people become part of that story is actually a re-engineering of culture, or a rework of culture that says this is what success looks like for the patient, and connecting people to that is incredibly powerful. So my hat's off to you. That is, I don't know if you intended to do that per se, but that's exactly what you're doing, is you're re-engineering culture. And it's a wonderful thing. I have this exercise called How to Shift Culture Using Storybooks. In fact, what you're doing is you're creating a storybook, an online storybook that says, here, this is what we do. This is the results. This is what success looks like. And everybody goes, and there's more to it. It's not just seeing it, it's understanding what it took to get people there. So people learn how to act, how to be, if you will. in that kind of a culture, rather than being short, for example, with I'm sure this doesn't pertain, but rather with being short with a client, for example, you realize I really have to take my time with this person. I really have to give them the best because they're going down this road, and when it's finished, they're all going to have this wonderful smile. So great stuff. That's really great stuff. Let me ask you this other question. This is as we getting close to the end, okay? And thanks very much. I appreciate it. It's been great comments so far. My favorite last question is if you had a magic wand and if you could change anything in the world that you see in your organization and your practices, what would you choose and why have you chosen that?
It goes back to what I said earlier about this life is a journey. And I say to my wife, she doesn't like it when I say this, but I said, we're all broken. And it's not necessarily a great way to put it. Maybe say nobody's perfect, yet we all have our issues and our problems that we're working through. Humans crave drama, and we all have this stuff that we're dealing with. And it's sad for me to see when people just bow out and get into that like scarcity or victim mindset where, oh, and they make excuses about everything rather than, hey, what could I do about it? Could you help? I'd like to do this. So that to me is, if I could change anything, it would be taking people that are stuck in this victimhood, this poor me pervasive mindset, and let them know that you're responsible for you. And there's a path. We've seen it time and again in millions of people that you can be successful regardless of where you came from or where you are. But it starts with you taking accountability for that and having a desire to want to be something different than you are.
It's interesting. You just triggered a thought. I think about this. I've thought about this for years. There's a word that we don't use anymore. It's too bad. It's in conflict with another word. The word we seem to throw around all the time is the word deserve. I deserve this. We deserve that. And the word we don't use much anymore is earn. EARN, earn.
Hmm.
You got to go out and make it happen. You got to go out and earn it. And I like to say, because when you earn something, no one can take it away from you. No one. You own it. It belongs to you. You've done what needs to be done in order to take ownership. But you don't hear that word much more, and much a lot anymore. It's always I deserve this, I deserve that, and certainly our generation, my generation, certainly was brought up with this notion that you had to go out and make your way, make your life. And believe me, when I started out, I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing, other than the fact that I did achieve my childhood dream, and then I became a naval officer. And to me, that was something I earned in school, and was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. But and every day when you're on a ship, you got to earn it. You can't pass this off to somebody else. You got to get out there and make it happen. So it was a great lesson to be learned about earning. So I appreciate that very much.
And whenever I come across someone who's served in the military, I always like to say thank you for your service.
I'll tell you the perfect response to that. I had a response, and I met a Marine vet, who's a former Marine Corps, and he taught me this one line: "You were worth it."
Hmm.
And so I always use that now
That's
when people
awesome.
say that, yeah, you were worth it. And it's true. That's how a lot of my guys felt when we were out there serving the country.
One
Anyway, go ahead.
one thing on that. So one thing we've discovered is that the veterans in the military are not necessarily always well taken care of from a healthcare standpoint. So for our part, what we do is every year we do an annual Freedom Day where we shut down the office to regular patient care, and we do free dentistry on all active military and veterans. We've been doing that for 7 years now. So last Wednesday, to thank us, the Vietnam veterans came over to our office, and in the parking lot, they put on a big tri-tip barbecue for us as a thank you. So it was really cool.
Great. Yeah. They're an appreciative group. They're an appreciative group. They know they have great heart, great soul. Yeah. I'm proud to be one of them, to be, my dad was. My dad was in World War II on several invasions in the Pacific
Mm,
in the Navy, suffered from PTSD before they knew what PTSD was.
mm.
It was not an easy journey as a child, but be that as it may, it is what it is. And you just learn, like you say, to deal with it and move on. So, in any case, Kevin, thank you so very much for your time today. I appreciate it. You've been a great guest, very insightful, and I will make sure when I post the notes to get your website listed and talk about a Veterans Day, dental day for them. I think that'd be really cool to do.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
Thank,
It's
thank
wonderful
you.
talking with you.
Same here. Take care.
Bye bye.